You looking at a young black king.
Astro project, blast of a tech, pass your neck with the shit to leave a rapper and Rex from the back of a black Acura. Bullet ricocheted and swayed and it passed through your pecs, the assassin wet. All y'all know y'all don't have to go. Sawed off shoddy, make you potty, probably call the law. Me no gangster, I'm no tough, got me child of the most high. I get on the mic and you go, bye-bye. Devil don't test me, I throw shrapnel where your chest be. Shooting our family down in the streets, fuck the police, they ain't marching for me. Pull up, not that Rari, I ain't bad yet. I pull up, out that 85% of mass at. I put this on God, bad black is so hard. Bitch, I'm going back to Harlem in my West African garb.
ETM Hotel, Rennie Sean, welcome in peace. My name is Sean. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning into the Master Warrior Clan YouTube channel. Alafia to all my West Africans out there, Jama and Boca. Y'all know what it is. Please like the show, share the show, tell a friend, we'll get a little busy, just a little busy. I know notifications are not coming through, so some people might not be getting it, so I'm trying to share the link as we speak. For those of you who are watching the live stream and will catch the replay in the future, don't forget to like the stream and share the stream with like-minded individuals. Appreciate everyone for all your support and for tuning in to our shows. I want to touch on a few things and introduce people to something they may not be privy to. And this is a good opportunity to round out the last couple of episodes into this right here, and then we own continuing to educate people about West, Central, South, East, and Northeast Africa and the traditions and the culture embedded all over the continent of Africa. And let me see here. What up? What's good, man? Omar, what's going on? Sunday out to how y'all doing this afternoon? I know a lot of people at work, so while y'all sliding in here a little bit, I hope people have been learning from the last couple of episodes that we've put together, and pretty much been following the conversation and supporting things from your vantage point. I know when I get into this, though, a few more people may jump in the building and not understand where I'm going in this, but we're gonna get it in. Okay, Omar said he just got off work. That's what's up. Yeah, that's what's up. Man, hey, look, Sunday Yachty, we all here to learn. Yeah, it's not just you, it's everybody, man. People who feel like they ain't gotta learn no more or can't learn from someone else, and you're in the wrong place. You're in the wrong place in space. Like, that's all we do is strive to continue to learn. The earth is teaching us, well, not the earth, but nature is teaching us something every day. And so, especially we're in the middle of a pandemic, and the greatest teacher is Mother Nature. And every time somebody think that they got something right, then they're corrected. And then when they think that they've solved that correction, they get recorrected. Or if they're out here making outlandish claims that has nothing to do with the actual understanding of nature, more specifically viruses as it pertains to this pandemic, um, then they just wishful thinking out there. So if you're on Facebook, what up, Enigma? If you're on Facebook, then you probably know a little bit more than some people who don't have it or have access to that. But I've been posting little things that you kind of keep people into the know. I'm gonna get started here in a minute. I'm just trying to share the show, um, and let people slide in, because usually people slide in and you end up going backwards. Or if other people are live right now, ain't no biggie. You know what I mean? You can catch the replay. For those of you who are interested in knowing more about certain things or whatever I'm talking about. So yeah, let me get this thing in. Then we're gonna get it cracking. So yeah, I see some more people have come in the building. Please like the show, share the show. I appreciate everybody tuning in. I mean, whether you comment or not, I know if you're working, you can't comment. You might just be tuned in with your ear pods or something like that, and that's cool too. And you want to know what's going on. If it ain't messy enough for some people, then I understand that they're gonna slide out of that. That's cool too. But anyway, this is gonna be very interesting. Whether it's just me here by myself, or someone else, it's gonna get really, 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 really interesting. I wonder what Kofi at the moment though, because he ain't at work. So yeah, it's gonna get interesting, bro. For real. I'm gonna turn up a little bit. But nah, man, let's get into it, and then for those who ever holler, they just miss it. All right, so a couple of months ago, I don't know if any of y'all have noticed this, but there's a documentary that this brother is working on to try to bring forth some information. And the documentary to show centuries before Greeks and how African astronomers named the stars. So that's more specifically to what he was speaking to. And the article reads, remember the constellation Orion, the hunter with the 3 stars in his belt? Problematic, not least from a menswear perspective. It would give Orion a size 60 light year waist. Some cultures in Africa had better explanation for this star group. All right, it says to them, the 3 stars represented 3 zebras, and the star on Orion's left shoulder, what is that? Betelgeuse, was a lion eyeing them hungrily. It says from the earliest times, uh, African cultures showed a keen interest. My bad, I had the wrong button. Africans shown a keen interest. Where I'm at. Yeah, interest in the cosmos. Right here. Let me expand it out a little bit. My bad for anybody on the cell phone. This may work for you. So I'm right here. And of course, I source everything up. So if you want to go back and retrieve the sources, I have them available. From the earliest times, African culture showed a keen interest in the cosmos, says astronomer educator Gary Swingen, manager of the Panther Academy Planetarium in Patterson. And by the earliest times, read many centuries before the Greeks, generally appears that Africa might be the cradle not only of mankind, but also of astronomical investigation, Swinger said. He says the African Universe, a projected 3-part, $1.8 million documentary he's working on and still raising money for, he hopes to complete it by the end of 2022, will visit sites in southern Egypt, Kenya, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Mali, and the Gambia, where remains of ancient calendars, observatories, and sites of astronomical significance can still be found. This is a very timely thing, Michael Schwartz, a former NASA astronomer and archaeologist who will be assisting on the project. This is a piece of science that still needs to be done. He says the African universe is part of a larger initiative swinging launched in 2022. He has the Belinda Educational Group for Science and Technology, named after his late wife, is meant to encourage interest in the sciences, particularly astronomy and astrophysics, by students of color. Another BEGST project is to create an observatory in Arizona, equipped with a 24-inch reflecting telescope in honor of Ronald Irwin McNair, the African American astronaut who died in the 1986 Challenger disaster. He said it's like the slogan Black Lives Matter. Swanger said, science and technology matter to children of color, and we need to get the message across. One way to get the word out is to document how astronomy shaped life in Africa going back many thousands of years. The three stars in Orion's belt, that is to say, the three zebras, were important because they pointed the way to the digging stars. Seeing this star cluster in the horizon in the early morning gave Africans heads up that it was time to plant. We in the West know this group of Pleiades, the Seven Sisters. Explanations for the Milky Way varied culture to culture. Some saw it as a road leading through the forest. Others saw it as sparks from a campfire lit by some other tribe on the other end of the continent. A few of the constellation names seem to be so commonly referenced that we can take them to be authentic terms. Mike Shanahan, director of the Jennifer Chastity Planetarium Library of Science Center of New Jersey. Now, the Southern Cross is referred to as a giraffe by the Basotho people of Southern Africa, he said. The Zulu referred to it as the tree of life. The Tuareg people, Algeria, referred to it as the Big Dipper, as a camel. Astronomy pioneers. But it's not just like in mythological terms that Africans understood the stars. They were also early scientists. In several African nations, there are currently 55 arrangements of stones, not unlike Stonehenge, but smaller and older, seen to align with prominent stars. One such arrangement in Zimbabwe, called the Great Enclosure, contains 3 stones that align with 3 belt stars in Orion, not as they are now, but as they would have been 75,000 to 150,000 years ago, when the wobble or precision in the Earth's axis would have changed the entire orientation of the sky. There may be similar arrangements of stones, its significance if disputed, in South Africa dubbed Adam's calendar. Another stone circle at Nabta Playa in southern Egypt makes the solstice. Other cultures use the stars in meaningful ways, Shanahan said. It wasn't just the Greco-Roman culture like we got in school. It all comes under the heading of archaeoastronomy, a hybrid discipline that looks at the role the stars played in past cultures. Schwartz, a former student of Swagin's originally from Livingston, is a specialist. He has a key behind the scene role in the documentary. It will be my job to look at the satellite photos of these sites and measure the length of the shadows on a particular days and say, yes, this needs to be investigated. This is definitely a calendar, Schwartz said. There's every indication that several are. One unusual piece of astronomical lore comes from the Dogon people of Mali. There is an old legend that fish-like creatures from the star Sirius came to Africa some 5,000 years ago. The aliens explain many useful things, among them that a second smallest star, invisible to the naked eye, orbited Sirius. Preposterous, of course, except the Sirius B wasn't discovered by European astronomers until 1862. How did they know, Swanger said? That's the mystery. Not such a mystery, say skeptics. The story of the fish beings was first told to French anthropologists in the 1930s. The Dogon could have incorporated modern science into their story by then. But those skeptics also have skeptics. They say they've seen the double star grouping depicted in 400-year-old Dogon artifacts. Such confusions are natural to the field that it is understudied and underfunded. These very notions that ancient Africa could have science was, until fairly recently, dismissed out of hand. Europeans are Eurocentric, Schwartz says. The whole idea from European point of view is that Africans were not capable of such things. It's a bias. Now that racist attitude is changing, Swanging's documentary project has a twofold purpose: to educate the general public and also to promote further study of these ancient artifacts. Part of the aim of the African Universe documentary is to put African American research to work. Astronomy and history students from some 50 historical Black colleges will be engaged as filming progresses to investigate the old sites and to work out the mathematics behind the enigmatic stones and legends. We'll have astronomy students, Black studies students behind the scenes doing calculations, Swanger said. It's not just an entertainment film, it's an investigation of these sites. The popular interest is there, Swanger says. He got a sense of it when he gave a planetarium show 3 years ago called the Gospel Music Under the Stars. 8 gospel singers and the keyboardist gave a live performance under Patterson's planetarium dome, while Swanger recounted African legends and recalled the importance of stars to enslaved people who followed the drinking god or the Little Dipper north to the freedom. It was standing room only, he said. It got really favorable response from a lot of people. It was this show that sparked the idea of astronomy film that in particular might fire imaginations of African American kids. The whole idea is to get students interested in astronomy and space science, he said. From looking to the past, we hope we can inspire them to look toward the future. We want to inspire African American students to go on into that area. It's a preposterous time. Several of the day's most high-profile astronomers are African American. Among them, astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, Derek Pitts, chief astronomer of Franklin Institute. There are a lot of role models. It's a preposterous time also for Swanging. Recently, an asteroid was named after him, and the namer was none other than his old student, Michael Schwartz, co-discoverer of the tiny body in 2001. He deserves it, Schwartz says. Asteroid 100,007,396 Swanging, located between Mars and Jupiter, has a 4.19 year orbital period around the sun. It has now been absorbed by close to 500 people. It's very odd to think that something in space is named after you, Swanger said. It's like a little bit of immortality. Another of his students, then an aide working in the Middle East, named a planetarium after him in Afghanistan, currently from obvious reasons offline. Swanger has been teaching for 50 plus years, first at the Newark Museum Planetarium. He was a director in 1966 to 1981 and started in 2006 in Patterson. Such honors from his proteges make him feel those years haven't been wasted. It just goes to show how actually had an influence on people, he said. It signifies I was appreciated. So this was published this year, and we can look forward to the documentary sometime, maybe late 2022, if the funding is there and everything gets done. But it's going to go through Africa and look at those particular sites and do what is necessarily needed. And I actually do agree with the point of view when this statement was made about how things were Eurocentric, and how they frown upon Africa and they looked at them very weirdly. This line right here: Europeans are Eurocentric. Schwartz said, the whole idea from the European point of view is that Africans were not capable of such things. So when we go on and we talk about the folklore or the mythology and these different Africans explaining things the best way that they can from their worldview, we have to keep this point of view in mind. Let me zoom. I want to make this big. Europeans are Eurocentric, Schwartz said. The whole idea from the European point of view is that Africans were not capable of such things. What were they not capable of? Understanding the universe, because they didn't have the tools. Now that the racist attitude is changing, Swinger's documentary project has a twofold purpose. And he's using HBCUs to help implement his research. Significant. So let's take a look at what we can expect in this particular project. Oh, you thought I wouldn't have any more? Nah, I got a lot more. Let me go full screen.
I want to show you a very special place. It's not near Paterson, New Jersey. It's not even in New Jersey or even in the United States. It is a place that is very far away from where you and I live. In fact, I'm going to show you a place which is about 5,000 miles away. Here it is. This is Africa, one of the largest continents in the world, bigger than the size of Canada, the United States, and Russia put together. Africa is not a country, but a continent of 55 countries. It is a continent of many nations with hundreds of cultures spread among a billion people. Africa is a place blessed with magnificent mountain ranges, stretching hundreds of miles across the continent. Africa has tropical regions where there are dense rainforests and spectacular wetlands, stretching across the central part of the continent. Africa has the world's largest deserts. 1/3 of the continent is covered with sandy landscapes dotted with sand dunes, stretching across the land as far as the eye can see. Africa is a place that has some of the largest and most beautiful lakes in the world that offer spectacular and breathtaking views of coastal surroundings. This is a place where the world's most impressive wildlife live and roam across a variety of beautiful landscapes where time seems to stand still. It is here on this faraway continent where the human race began almost 4 million years ago. It is here that the first humans may have peered out of their openings of their caves and gazed at the sky and wondered how it all began. A few hundred years ago, much of the rich history of Africa went unnoticed, and in many cases even ignored. When the first explorers came to Africa from Europe, they thought the Africans were primitive and uneducated because they couldn't read or write. Simply put, they believed the Africans were a people without a history. In 1830, German philosopher H.F. Hegel said that Africa had no history worth considering. Like so many people of his time, he was convinced that except for Egypt, the entire continent of Africa was uncivilized. Many years later, even historians and archaeologists believed in his view of Africa. As recently as 1963, British historian Hugh Roper claimed that Africa had no history until the Europeans came to the continent and settled there. But these Europeans were wrong. Long before the ships from Europe landed on the shores of the African continent, long before there was even a Europe, Africa was already civilized. The continent already had a hidden history of magnificent kingdoms that flourished for hundreds of years. Even before ancient Greek astronomers gazed at the night sky and created constellations and traced the movements of planets in the heavens, there were African sky watchers. They too had their African universe. This is the way the night sky looks over Western Africa. It is a breathtaking view, perfect for stargazing. If you and I were there, we would see a crystal clear sky with stars so bright that they would appear to leap out at us. No wonder hundreds of years ago, the African people looked up at the night sky and created stories about the sun, moon, stars, and even the planets. According to some African legends, nighttime came when the earth was covered with a blanket filled with holes that make up the stars. When the fabric was removed, daytime arrived with the sun gleaming down from the sky. Another African legend said that night came when a crocodile ate the sun, and daytime comes when the sun came out of the crocodile's mouth. Even the moon had many myths attached to it. Ancient African sky watchers considered the moon to be a very beautiful goddess, Mawu. Mawu was the sister of the sun. She was very popular throughout Africa because of her incredible powers. During the night, Mawu brought cooler temperatures to the African world. She was also known as the first mother, the goddess who gave light to all creatures on earth. No wonder there are so many beautiful pictures of this lovely goddess. If we look at the moon throughout the month, we will see that it goes through phases, constantly changing its shape from a large globe to a thin sliver of light. There's a very old African tale that explains why the moon has phases. According to one African legend, the moon was constantly being eaten by the sun. This explains why the moon changes its appearance throughout the month. But when the sun goes away, the moon starts growing back little by little until it becomes a full moon. Then the battle between the sun and the moon starts all over again. Just like the ancient Greeks and Romans, the people of Africa grouped the stars together and made pictures in the sky of gods and goddesses, animals, and all sorts of things. These star pictures are called constellations. If you go outside at night during the winter months, you can see some of these African constellations. They are the same starry pictures that were created thousands of years ago. This is Orion. The ancient Greeks and Romans saw Orion as a hunter with a lion skin shield and a large club. But the Africans saw these stars in a completely different way. The stars in Orion's belt were believed to be 3 zebras. Orion's shoulder, marked by this bright star, Betelgeuse, was a fierce lion who sat and watched these animals. The 3 zebras were important to the African stargazers because they were used for finding the digging stars. Try this when you're outside looking at the real sky. Take a look at the 3 stars in Orion's belt. Now, if you take your hand and point to the bottom star of the belt, or the first zebra, then you move your hand to the middle star, the second zebra, and now to the top star, or the third zebra. And if you keep your hand very straight and move it slowly across the sky, you'll find a very important group of stars. This tiny group of stars right over here are called the Pleiades, commonly known as the 7 Sisters. You can easily find them in the night sky during the winter and spring months. African stargazers called them the digging stars. Looking through a large telescope at the Pleiades, or the digging stars, we see a beautiful cluster of several hundreds of stars so far away from Earth that their light takes nearly 450 years to reach us. All over Africa, these stars were used to remind people that it was time to begin digging into the ground for planting crops. Whenever they would see these stars rising in the early morning sky, it meant that it was time to start preparing the soil for putting seeds into the ground. Just like the ancient Greeks and Romans wondered about the night sky, many African watchers looked up at the starry patterns and tried to make sense out of them. Just below Orion is the brightest star in the night sky, called Sirius. Several African cultures believed that this was one of the most important stars in the sky. During the winter months, this star rises in the morning, shining brighter than any other star in the sky. The Zulu people of South Africa believed Sirius had a power to pull the night across the sky. There's something even more mysterious about this star. These West African people of Mali are called the Dogons. They believe that 5,000 years ago, fish-like people came to Earth from a planet orbiting a companion star of Sirius. The Dogons believed that these alien beings lived among them, and while they were on Earth, these creatures taught them about the planets of the solar system, agriculture, and many other extraordinary things. What is remarkable about the Dogon belief is that that companion star was not discovered until astronomers could see it through giant telescopes hundreds of years later. How these people who didn't have any astronomical instruments knew so much about the invisible star is still a mystery. Like ancient civilizations everywhere, early African people looked at the night sky and tried to make sense out of it. Now there is overwhelming evidence that they built observatories thousands of years ago. Throughout the continent, ancient astronomical structures were built to study the cosmos. This circle of stones is called Nabta Playa. It is located 700 miles south of the Great Pyramid of Egypt. Scientists believe this unusual formation was built more than 7,000 years ago, making it the oldest stone circle in the world, and possibly the oldest astronomical observatory on Earth. In fact, Nabta Playa is older than the formation of massive stones in Europe, known as Stonehenge. Recently, scientists uncovered clues that suggest that the stones actually represent a complex calendar system used to track the first day of summer and the arrival of seasons. Some stones were aligned to track the bright stars Sirius, Alpha Centauri, and Arcturus. It is now believed that this ancient African observatory represents the first attempt by humans to make a connection to the universe. This is the Kola Pillar site. It is a ring of stones located on a barren rolling landscape. It was believed that this formation of stones was built about 2,000 years ago. But recent investigations suggest that it may be even older. It may have been built 4,000 years ago. As you can see, the stone pillars lean in different directions. An old African myth said that the stones were placed in this way because they were once men who were changed into stones by the devil. Recently, scientists have uncovered clues that suggest the stones represent an accurate, complex calendar system. This ancient Stonehenge may have been the birthplace of astronomy on the continent. This crumbling ring of stones, located in Zimbabwe, is all that remains of a royal palace that was part of the Great Zimbabwe Kingdom 800 years ago. The structure is called the Great Enclosure. The way the walls are arranged and the complicated symbols found on the stones suggest that it may have been used as an astronomical observatory. Several of these massive stones line up with certain bright stars in the constellation of Orion. Markings on the walls of this complex show the movements of the stars, the planet Venus, and the Earth's position with respect to the Sun. Measuring 300 feet across, the great enclosure is only a small part of the ancient Zimbabwe kingdom. Aerial photographs and satellite images show a much larger arrangement of stones surrounding the structure. This may have been at one time one of the largest structures in this part of Africa, south of the Sahara Desert. Further south of the great enclosure is another ancient African structure. Scattered throughout the mountains of South Africa are thousands of circular ruins, which are believed to be the oldest man-made structures in the world. Within this structure is a smaller circle of stones called the Adam's Calendar, sometimes referred to as the African Stonehenge. Measuring about 100 feet across, the stone circle is believed to be 75,000 years old. This means that the Adam's Calendar is older than the pyramids by tens of thousands of years. Aerial views of this magnificent structure show certain stones were moved into places precisely aligned with the compass points of north, south, east, and west. Other stones were placed with a specific purpose in mind to track the movement of the sun and stars in Orion's belt. A 3D journey of the Adam's Calendar shows a remarkable network structure of massive stones carried to the area by its ancient builders. There are many more of these ancient structures across the face of the African continent. They reveal to us the incredible achievements of these ancient astronomers. They tell us about civilizations that flourished on the African continent long before Western civilization. Even more than that, they tell us that there are many more secrets in the African universe yet to be revealed.
All right, so again, for those of you who are joining late, who may just be getting into the well, not really into the conversation, but pretty much following that particular video, I'm just gonna touch over this before I go on to my next position here. So there's a project that will be releasing, hopefully it'll be releasing at the end of 2020, dealing with African astronomers and how they name the stars. My bad, I did it again with this messed up finger. All right, so it talked about the constellations of Orion and how Africans saw things, and how they looked at the natural world. And you have astronomers working this project. If you don't believe me, you got Michael Schwartz, NASA astronomer, an archaeologist that is working on this project with Swanging and the brother, and then some HBCU students that'll be participating in the calculations of everything, and also from a historical standpoint. This is the astronomer that I mentioned earlier, Gary Swanging. This is his project where he's overseeing it. Now, I do have this in the description of the video for those of you who are joining late who want to go back and pretty much read it, but I don't want to, kind of get in the way of all of those things. But he talked about the importance of Africa and how they view the world and all of these things. And, you'll find out the article and even the beginning of the actual video that I actually played quite interesting. Now, moving on, I want to just bring up somebody who of importance from South Africa, who deals with cosmic Africa. You may be able to find that online, but his name is Themba. He was born in 1973. He's a South African astrophysicist and founding director of Astronomy Africa. He is perhaps best known for his work, and let me blow this up, Cosmic Africa. All right, I'm gonna give this to you slow so people can see it. Themba, born in 73, South African astrophysicist and founding director of Astronomy in Africa. He is perhaps best known for his work, the Cosmic Africa Project, that attempts to reconcile science and myth. All right. He's born in, I ain't got to go too far into that, dealing with, his backgrounds and all of that. Okay. I just wanted to kind of introduce you to an astrophysicist who is looking to reconcile science and myth. There has to be a reason for that. He has a high interest in it. And I know many of you probably never heard of Madupe. However, he received his doctorate in astronomy at the University of Cape Town for his thesis that studied in the oscillations in the stellar atmosphere. In particular, he investigated the interactions of radiative transfer and pulsation in the atmospheres of stars by solving non-adiabatic pulsation equations. He works as a researcher at SAAO and as a lecturer at the University of Cape Town. His other interests involve in the study of African ethnoastronomy. Remember, you've seen this word before. It's an interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary study of how people in the past have understood the phenomenon in the sky and how they use these phenomena and what role the sky played in their cultures. So I wanted to introduce y'all to him. And again, bring up this term here because you've heard it first from the previous Swanging talked about ethnoastronomy. And I'll click on that in a minute and just to give you that. So he's a principal investigator, South Africa led collaboration with Mali to digitize and analyze science documents found in Timbuktu libraries. So he's there. And again, this is a film that we actually can view. But just to get a little bit into archaeoastronomy and as it sits for those of you who are unfamiliar or who may have joined us late when the word was mentioned. It's an interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary study of how people in the past understood the phenomenon in the sky and how they used these phenomena and what role the sky played in their cultures. Clive Ruggles argues it is misleading to consider archaeoastronomy to be the study of ancient astronomy, as modern astronomy is a scientific discipline, while archaeoastronomy considers some symbolically rich cultural interpretations of phenomena in the sky by other cultures. It is often twined in ethnoastronomy, the political study of sky watching in contemporary societies. Astroastronomy is also closely associated with historical astronomy, the use of historical records of heavenly events to answer astronomical problems and the history of astronomy, which uses written records to evaluate past astronomical practices. Astroastronomy uses a variety of methods to uncover evidence of the past practices, including archaeology, anthropology, astronomy, statistics, and probability in history. Because these methods are diverse and use data from such different sources, integrated them into a coherent argument has been a long-term difficulty for astroastronomers. Archaeoastronomers fills complementary niches in the landscape of archaeology and cognitive archaeology. Material evidence and its connections to the sky can reveal how a wider landscape can be integrated into beliefs about the cycles of nature, such as the Mayan astronomy and its relationship to agriculture. Other examples might be brought together. Ideas of cognition and landscape includes study of cosmic order embedded in the roads of settlements. You can go and get into all of this. It's a nice little wiki art, of course. You can go and get a little deeper dive into the actual sources, and you can see why people take the position that they actually take, the pros and the cons, and why they consider this to be a study. And you can get into it from that perspective. But don't hinge your conclusion on one person's thought without doing proper research methodology and understanding what is actually transpiring here. So, moving on. Go holler at your boy. Check him out, man. The Madupe is an astrophysicist. So he's getting busy in the field. And let's talk a little bit more about what he's getting busy in the field on. So Africa's ancient astronomers made their mark in culture and folklore. What is he talking about? What is this article talking about? This was published in the University of Cape Town News. This is all Cape Town info right here. All right, 2014 article, by the way. Now it says, for centuries, Africans have measured time, seasons, and cycles and directions by the stars. Religion and folklore too reflect this relationship with the heavens, as culture, mathematics, and science of astronomy was captured by earlier scholars in the centers of Timbuktu. Africa astronomers have an ancient history, says the Madupe. All right, who's the star of the actual film. Madupe was speaking at a public lecture, Cosmic Africa, My Personal Journey, part of the Dark Side of the Universe, in an international conference hosted by UTC's Astrophysics, Cosmology, and Gravity Center from the 17th to the 22nd of November. The event attracted some of the world's leading experts in dark matter and dark energy. Madupe's own story is distinctively African. His journey as an astronomer began in 1986 when Halley's Comet passed the Earth. The event ignited the imagination of the boy living in a village near Dusty Mafeking. By 13, he built a telescope and made a map of the moon. His lecture reflected just how deeply rooted mathematical and cultural astronomy are in the continent's story. From the myths and the legends attached to sand folklore and the calendar system of the Dogons of Mali, based on the phases of the moon, to the many megalithic Stonehenge of Nabta Playa in the Sahara. The nomadic pastoralists who moved through the western tracts of the desert made careful observations of the skies using these ceremonial rock formations, deemed to have been built 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years before those of the Stonehenge and elsewhere in Europe. At Nabta Playa, they tracked celestial phenomena such as the rising of the sun, the summer solstice, and signal of the summer rains. And at night, the stars guided them across the desert. Africa also has a thriving history of scholarship, where astronomy played an integral role, notably in Timbuktu, Mali, where thousands of scroll manuscripts written in Arabic and other local languages track scholastic endeavors of three major Western African kingdoms: Ghana at around the 11th century, Mali around the 14th, and the Songhai that follows behind the 15th century. The culture of learning reached a peak in the Songhai Empire, producing a thriving book trade of Arabic texts on the Quranic studies, medicine, mathematics, and astronomy, said Madupe. When he visited Timbuktu 8 years ago, Madupe worked with a translator to study a book by Abdul Abbas written in 1732, revealing mathematical algorithms that determined the Islamic calendar. He was able to confirm the scholars' results. They knew astronomy very well. In one manuscript, the author writes of the meteor shower in 1583. Stars flew around the sky as if fire had been kindled in the whole sky, east, west, north, and south. People were extremely disturbed about that. It continued until after dawn. During his visit to Timbuktu, Madupe found an imam teaching students from a very early Earth-centered model of the universe. Given this rich catalog, Madupe is convinced mathematical astronomy existed in Africa centuries before modern scientific institutions were established. Now we can speak of the cultural timeline of astronomy in Africa. And fortunately, the Timbuktu manuscripts, as these are known collectively, survived the 2013 decimation by Islamist rebels. Thousands finding their way to sanctuary in Bamako in the south. In 2003, the UCC became involved in the Timbuktu Manuscript Project in partnership with the South African government. You can check that article out as well. So Madupe's got his hands full on a couple of things. But here in Physics Today, this is a 2006 published article. The astronomer unearths evidence of scientific tradition in Africa. So pretty much he was in an interview here that you actually can go through if you want to and deal with this question and answer phase, which pretty much he gets into also in a video, but I don't want to really get into all of that because I don't want to bore anybody with a back and forth or something you can actually have time for. Last but not least, man, before I let y'all get up out of here, this is the African Astronomy Prior to European Colonization lecture from the Dr. Madupe. All right. I'm gonna play a little bit of it, not a lot. And then I'm gonna give it to, I made sure that in the description of the video for people who are interested in learning more and gaining greater context to understand how he's making his argument the way that he's making it and why understanding the genius of Africa is important as a whole, especially in this said subject at times when they didn't have all the technology that we have today, which is significant.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Julia Higgins, and I'm Foreign Secretary of the Royal.
Good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. I feel very honored that I've been invited to give tonight this evening's lecture. My love for astronomy goes back to the time when I was 13 years old. And one thing that used to worry me and I noticed was all the books that I read, either on my own at home, books from the library or books from school about astronomy. Whenever they mentioned the history of the subject, there was always one part missing, and that was the history of African participation of Africans in astronomy. And here by astronomy, I mean from the earliest times when astronomy just meant looking up at the stars and studying the movements and the patterns up there of the stars. And the reason why this information was not there in our school curriculum, I think it had to do with the order of the day, where in South Africa, attempts were made to remove us from our history or to separate us from our history so that we don't aspire to become great. The common belief being that nothing happened in Africa before the arrival of Europeans in our continent. Later, I found out about this kind of information presented here in this map, which shows you what Africa was like before the arrival of Europeans. You'll see that, especially in West Africa, there were three major empires there. The first one started probably about 1,500 years ago, the Ghana Empire, which was followed by the Mali and the Songhai empires. These were big empires. To give you an idea, the Ghana Empire, shown by I think it is the black, coloring there, at its peak, covered an area about 6 times the area of the United Kingdom. That's how big that empire was. And it consisted of, it included, several millions of people. There were also other better known empires in the east, the southern east part of the continent, the Swahili empires. They all show that long before the arrival of Europeans in Africa, our people were very well organized. They led very well organized lives, and they had great empires and kingdoms, as I said. And we know this because some of the artifacts and buildings are still there with us today. I mean, at the top there, you have the golden rhinoceros, 800 years old, made out of pure gold from the Limpopo province, one of the northern provinces in South Africa. And that picture there of the ruins at Great Zimbabwe. I mean, this is evidence of sophistication and a very well organized society. And my point is that you couldn't have such level of organization if you didn't have good agriculture. And during those days, good agriculture meant that you had to know the stars. You need to be able to predict when the rains comes so that you are prepared to work on the land. And so already, I mean, just from that map that you saw and evidence like this, there's no way that our people could not have studied the heavens for their daily use, as it was the case almost everywhere in the world. So I was lucky that in 1998, I was approached by filmmakers who wanted to make a film about exactly the relationship of Africa to the stars. We selected 3 countries in Africa. We selected Namibia, Mali, and Egypt. The first 2 countries, Namibia and Mali, we selected because there are societies still alive today who still live more or less the same way like they did 500 years ago. So that provided us with a perfect opportunity to show, very well in video that astronomy was very much an integral part of the African life, as it was everywhere else on Earth. So we studied the Bushmen in Namibia, the Dogon people in Mali, and in Egypt, the special thing about that was the naphtha stones. These are stones very similar to Stonehenge, which were erected about 7,000 years ago in order to study the shift in the rising positions of the sun. And here, I mean, this is really the result of the movement of the Earth around the sun. Anyway, I'll talk about it later. The film is not yet, still not yet available commercially, but there are plans to do that in the future. We visited the Bushmen around the time of the partial eclipse in 2001. And one of the mistakes that we did was we tried to surprise them. So what we did was a couple of days before the eclipse, we told them about the eclipse. We didn't tell them exactly when it was going to happen. The idea was so that we can see how they react to an eclipse, a solar eclipse. And we almost got into trouble. During the day of the eclipse, they saw us that we were prepared for the eclipse, and they were worried, how can these people be able to predict something so unpredictable and so unnatural? And it turns out that the reason why they were very angry with us was that they associate eclipses with bad things, as it is shown in this rock engraving, where the lion, an eclipse is interpreted as a lion wrapping its tail around the sun. And lions, according to the Bushman culture, is associated with bad things, basically. So we had to apologize and explain to them exactly what causes eclipses and things like that. But, the Bushmen are fantastic storytellers. When I was there in the evening listening to them, I could only think of my 2 kids, how much they would benefit from, that kind of great storytelling. So, like everyone else on Earth, they made up constellations. Constellations are just apparent patterns formed by stars in the sky. For example, on the left there, you have a pattern which is called Orion, which was called Orion by the ancient Greeks. So what the ancient Greeks saw in the sky, they saw a hunter with the 3 stars showing the belt of the hunter. And yeah, and the head of the hunter is at number 12, written in green there. On the right is the way that the Bushmen people perceived of the same grouping of stars. The 3 stars of Orion's belt, according to the Bushmen, are the 3 zebras. And number 1 and 2 down there on the left picture shows you the sword of the hunter. And according to the Bushmen, that sword was the arrow. And then next to Orion, there's another star called Aldebaran, which is within that star cluster called the Hades. And then the 7 sisters called 7 stars called group of stars called the Pleiades. And the story associated with those patterns in the sky, according to the Bushmen, is that there was a man, that bright star called Aldebaran, who had 7 wives. And one night he decided to go hunting the 3 zebras. And being a poor hunter, he missed when he tried to shoot at the zebras. And he was scared to go back to his wives because he didn't bring them any meat. And that star number 5 is Betelgeuse. Sorry. No. That's star number 4, I think, because things are the other way around in the south. That star number 4 is Betelgeuse. And according to the Bushmen, it is the lion. And so he was afraid also to go and get his arrow because he was scared of that lion, Betelgeuse. So you can see from there that, like everyone on Earth, the Bushmen and all other African people were inspired in the same way by the night sky to form patterns in the night sky and associate earthly activities with those patterns. And then the Dogon people of Mali were really amazing because they really literally lived the same way like they did maybe 1,000 years ago. And there you can see very clearly that stars were very much important part of their lives. I mean, they involve stars in their decorations in their religion. I mean, that building that you see on the left there is the main temple, their main temple. And they draw patterns of stars and the moon and so on. And in the morning, they worship to the stars. And also in divination, that man inside that crow there is what is called a jackal diviner. And he uses star patterns to predict people's future. Another interesting thing about the Dogon was the calendar system. The calendar system is based on the moon. It is very similar to our ancient calendar system in South Africa. So what they would do is they would work out the number of days between successive full moons, for example, and that would give them a month. And in fact, that is why in some of our languages back in South Africa, we have the same word for the moon and the month. And those number of days between successive full moons is actually 29.5 days. That is the time it takes for the moon to go around the Earth. If you multiply that by 12 to get a year, it gives you 354 days, which is short by 11 days compared to our modern calendar, which is based on the movement of the Earth around the sun. So the African calendar, every year it misses 11 days. And after 3 years, we have lost 33 days, which is a whole month. And people would notice that, and they would add an additional month, so that after some years were 12 months long and others were 13 months long. We do the same today with the leap years, I mean, our year, we don't include a quarter of a day that is missing every year in our solar calendar. And after 4 years, that accumulates to a quarter times 4 to 1 day, which is why we add an additional day. And also they subdivided their month into weeks of 5 days long. And each day was named after the place where the market is taking place. So if today the market takes place in London, today is called London. If tomorrow the market takes place in Birmingham, tomorrow is Birmingham. Okay. And then we went to Napta, to Egypt, near the border of Egypt and Sudan, where those stone structures I told you about are located. They work in the same way as NAPTA, so as Stonehenge is supposed to operate, except that they are much smaller than the stones in Stonehenge, and but they predate Stonehenge by about 1,000 years. So the NAPTA stones were erected 1,000 years before Stonehenge. I mean, that is the oldest such known astronomical structure in the whole world. And we're lucky that when we're there, burial grounds were discovered around the same area of the stones. And people think that they can actually tell you more, they have more information about the people who erected those stones. And I mean, that is an example of one of the burial, skeletons of someone who was buried with burial goods, presents for the afterlife. And from the bones, they could tell, that those people were Black Africans. And so the story there is that about 10,000 years ago, the monsoon rains moved up into the Sahara Desert, and the Sahara used to have seasonal rains. And so these nomadic people from Central Africa used to move up to the Sahara, and they erected the stone structures. And they also found skeletons of people from the Mediterranean in that area. So it seems like that area was a trading area. But the notable thing they found there was that there was no differentiation in terms of social status. In other words, the people who were there were of the same social status. Yeah. So in NAPTA, you have two kinds of alignments. You have the alignment on the left, which is to do with the shifting rising points of the sun. And then on the right, you have alignments with respect to the different stars that were important to these people. And like Stonehenge, these rocks were moved from an area far away. I mean, these are not local rocks local to that area. So the alignments of these stars must have been very important to them. Otherwise, they wouldn't take all the trouble to drag the stones. I mean, some of them are like 2 tons, 2 tons in weight, and 2 meters in height.
That says a lot to me that they would move those stones from a distance to a particular location, because we see that significantly, if you want to point out, in ancient Egypt, where they would go south to bring, to query rocks and bring them back north, and vice versa. You might see this in central Congo, where they may go somewhere else and bring in stuff to build, and so on and so forth. However, it's just uniquely that. I said I'm not going to go through the actual whole lecture. Don't want to bore too many people with what's going on, but this is very important, a very important piece in a conversation for me. It may not be for other people, but a very important piece in the conversation for me, as far as the African universe and a look into the old world and how they used what they had to use in order to determine and come to the conclusion for things that they actually did. And I didn't do this giving someone, basically my perspective, and I'm just basically showing you how if astronomers are looking into how Africa brought forth certain things and answered certain questions for themselves at their times when they did not have the telescopes or the tools to measure the universe and the constellations and so on and so forth. you know um I don't know. I don't know what else to say to you. So I gave you an African American astronomer, a European astronomer that is also a part of the project, who is working with NASA, and I also gave you a South African astrophysicist, who runs the Cosmic Africa Project, that attempts to reconcile science and myth, and pretty much gave you some information behind that. Now, everything that I did put forth to you today is actually in the description of the video, so you can review all of this stuff on your own and you can see for yourself what has been said, especially those of you who have come into the build late and or may catch the replay but want to follow along with the actual sources. And I think that Africa played a great role in this field of study, whether it be mapping the stars, calendars, dates, even in their explanations of the universe, whether they got some of it wrong. You can't say they got it all, but that's, like I said in to your question, Sister Tika, that anyone who is saying that they got it wrong, no matter who they are, the people that are actually saying that, they have to demonstrate that, because they're the ones that are making the claim that they got it all wrong. So they got to go in and do their work and do their due diligence and put forth their their argument based on a solid, not a verbal critique, but a solid body of scientific data proving where they got certain things wrong and all of that. And you can't look at the Congo teachings as one. You have to go to South Africa and look at theirs. You got to go among the Zulu. You have to go among the Yoruba, among the Igbo, the Hausa, the Fulani, the Wolof, the Siri, the Remech, the Kikuyu. You have to go all over the continent to get into their cosmology and deal with how they saw things. And then you could see if they actually helped build anything that would project forward into the technological age and the development with all the science that we have today to help either explain something, clear something up, or help build on that body of knowledge. Because again, science is about knowing and knowing how to do. So it's about advancing scholarship, advancing information, and so on and so forth. There's nothing wrong with correlating. And for those of you who don't know what correlating means or anything like that, I think that may be a great word. It's just basically having a mutual relationship or connection in which one thing affects or depends on another potentially. Or you can go further than that and deal with that. May be a good word. It may not be a good word for other people. Some people may have a problem with what someone says. Some people may not. It's not neither here nor there. It doesn't matter neither here nor there. So I do want to appreciate everybody for tuning in, man. Like the show, share the show, tell a friend to tell a friend. Says we are space age Africans, but they laid the foundation for the things we know now. We can't claim to be space age Africans if we refuse the information that has been taught by the past. There's nothing space age about us today if we refuse to acknowledge the achievements that our ancestors made hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, regarding the field of astronomy, astrophysics, and so forth. Remember, those certain fields didn't know what astronomy was per se in certain eras of time. They didn't know, they were just trying to explain what they could actually explain, but you have to deal with that. But again, you can't be a space age African unless you acknowledge the work done prior to today and where it helped advance that body of knowledge. So unfortunately, it is what it is. No shots, no shade, no nothing. I thank everybody for tuning into the Macho Warrior Clan YouTube channel. Man, y'all can get to the fuller if you want to now. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. And on that note, I'm out.
I don't want to be